There was a 911 call that the incident was happening, that a woman was being chased up the street and being shot at.
It was after 7 o'clock Friday morning when Andrika was shot and killed in front of her home on Gunston near Connor on Detroit's east side. The suspect, Andrika's soon-to-be ex-husband.
They were going through a divorce, and it was a very bitter divorce proceeding.
In fact, they were scheduled to be in court less than 2 hours after he allegedly killed her.
Well, on Friday morning, Andrika was set to have a court hearing for her divorce, and just hours before, she stopped at home to get a change of clothes. And that's when her then husband, she was trying to leave, allegedly showed up with a gun and killed her.
It was 7:14 a.m. on August 4th, 2023, when Andrika Sims left her Detroit home for the last time, on her way to a divorce hearing that would end a 13-year marriage. It was supposed to be a day of liberation, the beginning of a new chapter for her and her 8 children. But just 2 hours later, she would be dead, her life taken by the very man who once claimed to love her. Andrika was running for her life, phone in hand, dialing 911 as the gunshots rang out behind her. Brian McIntosh wasn't just angry, he was determined to make sure she could never escape him. This wasn't just another tragic domestic dispute. This was a calculated act of control. A man who refused to let go, even at the cost of his wife's life. What happens when love turns into obsession? And when does the law finally intervene? Before we get too deep, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you find value in these discussions. As I peel back the layers of this story, I kept asking myself, how could this happen? How does a woman, a mother of 8, go from posting loving tributes to her husband on social media to running for her life, knowing that she may never see her children again? As a journalist, I've covered my fair share of tragedies, but this case is different. It's personal. It's haunting. Every detail I uncover forces me to ask more questions. Every answer I find opens up more layers of the psychological and emotional toll that Andrika's marriage took on her. At first glance, Andrika and Brian seemed to have the perfect life. Their social media accounts were filled with photos of their children, anniversary posts celebrating their love, and captions about their unwavering bond. Andrika referred to Brian as her rock and king, and in many ways, it appeared that this was a marriage built on a solid foundation. But then, the cracks began to show. Slowly at first, and then more rapidly, as Andrika posted cryptic messages that seemed to hint at something more sinister. Why cheat with someone who looks nothing like what you claim to want? She posted a message that sounded like an echo of something unsaid. Could she have been talking about Brian's infidelity? It's hard to say, but I suspect she was. I dug deeper. I found a post from 2021 where she celebrated their 11th wedding anniversary with a message that seemed both loving and resigned. Boy, was it a rough year, Andrika wrote. But they made it through. Yet by 2023, Andrika had had enough. She filed for divorce. And as I traced the timeline, I started to understand. There was more to the story than just a broken marriage. Andrika's words in those posts weren't just about a relationship falling apart. They were about survival. A woman who had reached her breaking point. A woman who was looking for a way out, but hadn't yet figured out how to escape the man who had once been her everything. Her friends and family say she had tried for years to make it work. They told me how she would stay up late at night, trying to patch things up, hoping for change. But nothing ever came. Infidelity, financial strain, and a deep sense of being trapped. She was suffocating under the weight of a marriage that demanded more than she could give. As I sifted through the details, I found more posts, messages that felt like a cry for help. Andrika warned her followers, saying,
"That person is having sex with someone else. You want that person back after they have been having sex with someone else? God knows how many people it has actually been. Where is your self-value? They know that you're going to take them back, and they are going to do it again. Wake up, wake up, wake up. That person came into your life to teach you self-worth and self-value. They came into your life to teach you a lesson. Now it's time to say goodbye."
She was trying to save herself, but she couldn't escape alone. And as I read through those words, it became clearer to me. Andrika had made the decision to leave, but Brian wasn't going to let that happen. But why? What made Brian go from the loving husband in those early social media posts to the man who chased Andrika down the street, gun in hand? Was it just the pain of rejection? Or was there something more? Something deeper that caused him to react with such brutal violence? These are the questions I couldn't stop asking myself as I looked closer at the final moments of Andrika's life. And then it all came together. At 7:32 a.m., Andrika called 911, her voice filled with fear as she ran down Gunston Street, fleeing from the man who had been her partner for over a decade. I can't imagine the terror she must have felt. Police were nearby, responding to the call.
The officers made record time getting there. They were in the area. As they approached, they could hear gunshots.
But the sound of gunshots pierced the air before they could get there. 6 shots.
They just couldn't get there in time.
He was actually standing over her with the gun in his hand. They ordered him to drop his weapon. He did. They immediately took him into custody.
6 times that Brian McIntosh fired at Andrika, his soon-to-be ex-wife. 6 shell casings littered the ground where she lay, a pool of blood quickly spreading around her. I've covered violent crimes before, but this was different. It wasn't just an act of rage or a man snapping under pressure. Brian had been waiting for this moment. The police later said that when they arrived, they found him standing over Andrika, holding the gun. There was no remorse in his eyes, no emotion at all. He was still in control, until they told him to drop the weapon. He did. And just like that, the life of a mother, a worker, a survivor, was snuffed out on the very streets she had once walked with her children. Brian McIntosh couldn't let Andrika go, and so he made sure she could never leave him. I don't know how anyone can make sense of this. How does someone who once wrote such beautiful things about his wife end up standing over her, taking her life in broad daylight? What does it say about Brian that he was so consumed with jealousy, with the idea of losing her, that he saw no other option but to kill her? The police chief in Detroit, James White, made an important statement after Andrika's murder. He said that the most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim is when they try to leave. And he was right. Andrika was just 2 hours away from finalizing her divorce, finally free of a relationship that had grown toxic, suffocating. But before she could escape, before she could take the first steps toward her new life, Brian McIntosh ended it all. And I can't help but wonder, how many more women will have to face this same fate before we start listening more closely to the signs? Before we stop minimizing the warning signals that domestic violence victims so often try to send? Brian McIntosh had no hesitation that morning. His motive was simple, almost primal. If he couldn't have her, no one could. But what did he destroy in the process? He didn't just take Andrika's life. He took the future of her 8 children. He destroyed the bond they had. And he left a family grappling with a tragedy that could have been prevented. As I reflect on this case, the questions just keep coming. Why did Brian feel the need to exercise such control over Andrika, to destroy everything she had worked for, everything she had tried to escape? The answer seems simple, but the reality is far more complicated. Domestic violence is about power, about control. And Andrika's story is not unique. It happens every day in homes all across this country. And it's not just about physical abuse. It's about the psychological toll it takes on the victim. As I continue to follow this case, one thing is clear. Andrika Sims' death should never have happened. But Brian McIntosh's violence is part of a larger problem. A problem that needs to be addressed on every level. From awareness to intervention, from community support to legal action, we have to start doing more to protect women like Andrika. And yet, despite everything, we have to ask ourselves, what are we missing? How many other Andrikas are out there, suffering in silence, waiting for help, hoping for change, and too afraid to ask for it? This case, for me, isn't just another headline. It's a reminder of how fragile life is, and how easy it is for someone to lose everything they worked for, everything they believed in, because of one person's selfish desire for control. I can't help but feel for those children, and for Andrika's family, who now have to pick up the pieces. I can't help but wonder, could we have done more? Could we have seen the signs? I don't know, but I do know this. If Andrika's story makes just one person step forward, if it makes just one person speak up and get help before it's too late, then maybe, just maybe, her death won't be in vain. If you or someone you know is in danger, please don't wait. Help is available. Call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-879-923. I hope these stories help you recognize the warning signs and encourage you to seek help or offer support before it's too late. I'll see you in the next episode of Crime of Passion. Thank you for watching.
She was a very caring person. She was She was lovable, she was open, she was very open, and she was very giving.
She was a year younger than me. I love my little sister. She was just, her heart was everything.
We would always go swimming. We love swimming. We love doing that. Metro Beach specifically.
She just didn't deserve it. She was a good-hearted person. She loved everybody.
DV is an epidemic. It's a silent killer that thrives in secrecy, in shame, in a system that fails women before they even realize they need help.
Deadly domestic violence making headlines in Metro Atlanta. 3 murders in as many weeks. January 16th, a Covington man is accused of shooting his wife and stepdaughter to death before surrendering to police. January 7th, a man walks into a hair salon in Duluth, shoots and kills his wife in front of their daughter before shooting himself. He survived. And just a day after ringing in the new year, Rainey Overman, a beloved Metro Atlanta nurse, is shot and killed at this hotel in Decatur. The GBI says her lover pulled the trigger and then killed himself.
A person who's abusive at home might be perfectly charming at work.
Kim Frendak of the Women's Resource Center to End Domestic Violence says such tragedies can easily spill out of the home and into the workplace and beyond.
It affects us at the parks and at the malls and wherever we might be.
Even in schools. In Southern California, investigators say Karen Smith, an elementary school teacher, was gunned down in her classroom by her husband, Cedric Anderson. Anderson then turned the gun on the classroom, killing an 8-year-old boy and wounding a 9-year-old, and then killed himself. How can we tell if a fellow co-worker is being targeted by an abuser?
There are subtle signs.
Here's what to look for.
Uncomfortable phone calls going on, a mark on an arm or extra makeup, a lot of nervousness about leaving the office and going to the car.
And we shouldn't be shy about asking questions.
Then you can say, I'm concerned about your safety, and I want you to know that it's safe to talk to me.
But what if you don't want to pry?
We really want you to make it your business.
That deadly violence can impact us directly or indirectly.
It's a community-based problem, and it requires a community-based solution. So we want you to ask, care. We want you to believe what you hear, and we want you to, without judgment, help this person who is suffering find the resources so they don't have to walk this scary journey by themselves.